Hey everybody, what's up? Richard Terrell here, Kirby Kid, and I am going to do an impromptu stream because I have a final exam to grade. So let me explain exactly what I mean. You can see here, Critical Gaming Network, my old blog, and back in the day, long time ago, I taught myself game design through writing a whole bunch of articles. One of the first things I did was I took Super Mario Brothers for the NES, and I uh, one article at a time developed the language to talk about it. So I started with mechanics and then interplay and variation and counterpoint, so on and so forth. This series is a great introduction to understanding game design. Mario's a great game, it's one of the best, and it's got a lot going on there. So it was really handy for sort of outlining these initial early concepts and doing it in a really clear way. So I did that here, right? But each of these concepts, it goes even deeper and deeper when you want to expand each of them, and so on and so forth for the rest of the 101 courses. It gets more and more complicated and talks about various things. But this, one of the interesting parts about this initial section is I ended everything after talking about Mario for this many articles on a final exam, and it's right here. This final exam, which is something that I created because I thought it was interesting. It's really one thing to read a bunch of articles, but it's another to actually provide feedback, engage with it, and submit something from your head and not just reading what I say off the screen. So this is a little final exam. It's got pictures, it's got specific questions, and it goes all the way down. It's only about 9 questions, so it's really not long at all. And I've had about 7 people take this exam since 2008, right? So I consider that to be a high number considering it is a test of sorts, and it's completely unnecessary for your enjoyment and financial and career success. So all the people that have put in time to do this, thanks. One of the newest person to do it is Harbros. He's in the Mario Maker workshop. So he's reading through my old blog and studying game design while also participating in the workshop. So I just thought I'd do this stream to go over his final exam and just talk about some Mario design at the same time. Blah, 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 blah. Name, years of gaming, favorite genre, favorite game. We got some Shadow of the Colossus and Ninja Gaiden and some Sunshine. That's interesting. Resident Evil. Mario Maker 2. It's interesting. Okay. So the first question is, discuss the pros and cons of Mario's run button function in Super Mario Brothers, right here. And Harper says, pros, the run button function is useful to let players go fast and jump higher and longer. It lets the player reach higher location or speed running a level. Also, it offers a layer of gameplay to master difficulty in terms of the D-cart, and in particular, dexterity and timing. Interesting. Cons, overlap input with the Fire Flower Mario, same button for shooting and running, difficult to control. You increase your sliding because of the increased speed and increased momentum. Some content will be skipped by a player. Give a tool person and they will find a way to optimize and experience it. One thing I would say here is that difficult to control is not a con of design. It's what might create a con for your particular playstyle or strategy. But that's more of a when you're actually playing the game kind of thing. It's not a con to have properties and have some things in your game, some mechanics be more difficult to handle than others. So yeah, this definitely is a design issue, and this next one isn't. And then some content will be skipped by the player. So the function of running, yeah, I don't consider that to be a con either, but it's something to consider, right? It actually widens the complexity of things you have to consider and tune around with the game, and because of that, as a designer, you have to consider what all those new possibilities are. So that's kind of what that's saying. Still a really good answer. We're gonna move on. Number 2, why do you think it's important or significant that Mario's death animation and the enemy death animations after getting hit by a fireball fall down through the stage? Explain in full detail. Harbor says, I read one of the comments and I agree with that. It's all about gravity. Cheater, but it's also a cheap and convenient recycle of an animation for a simple and clear feedback purpose. Interesting. So, I think one of the original things I was thinking when I formed this question is something a little bit of an artistic interpretation type of question, and another one of, you know, game design and feedback. And when you kill an enemy and they slide off the bottom of the screen, you know, when Mario falls down a pit, that's where you don't want to go, and that's instant death no matter what state you're in, including Superstar Mario. So falling off the bottom of the screen is pretty much death, especially in the original where we don't have vertical levels or scrolling. So having enemies fall down there is also sort of thematically resonant with that idea that if Mario can't fall down there, enemies can't fall down there, nothing can. And when you get hurt and you slide down the screen and go to the bottom, it's just playing into the spatial categorization, the way you break down space and understand, you know, getting up high is difficult, falling down too low is dangerous, you know, all those things. So it just kind of synergizes well, and it may seem kind of trivial, but a lot of games may arbitrarily pick like a death animation or a way they handle their feedback or their graphics that does not contain that kind of synergy, and it matters. Everything adds up. So that's interesting. Number 3. Why do you think it's significant or important that the fire bars, see figure 3, rotate clockwise and the power-ups travel to the right when unobstructed? Explain in full detail. The fire bars, as any dangerous element of the game moves towards the player, that's clockwise, contrary to their progression, contrary to, you know, Mario's moving to the right, to kill and obstruct their path, while the power-ups falling the same direction of the player is a clear sign that it is a positive game element and that it is different from Goombas, which have a similar shape. Yeah, all that's true. That's an interesting way to put it, with the just kind of likening fire bar motion to all the rest of the enemy motion, in that it's basically right to left. What I was thinking mostly with this question, which is, I'll show you the image here. Where is it? Right here. What I was thinking mostly with this question is, if the fire bar moved counterclockwise, the window to safely travel across its path would be bigger. When it's counterclockwise, the window is smaller. And I don't know if there's a really good way for me to show this, but let's just try this. Highlight that, bring this over here, do this. Zoom in. Can we zoom in? No. Okay, so if the fire bar is going clockwise, that means Mario, when it's right here, Mario really can't slip down this hole. So when the fire bar is here to maybe all the way right here is dangerous. If you think of the timing as like a pie wedge or a circle graph, you can definitely see that dot 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 dot. That's like a fourth of the time it's dangerous, right? Pretty interesting. If you consider Mario might jump into the space, let me do a different color. This is really small, I know. Too bad. If you consider Mario might jump into the space right here, that means the wedge is even larger. Red pen. And it could take up to, what are we going to call that? Roughly a third of the space is dangerous, right? And when you're putting a hazard into your game and you're considering how it's used, you want to kind of it to work. And this is a really good way of understanding how it works. Timing wise, it's dangerous a third of the time it's swinging around. If the bar is moving counterclockwise, that means when the bar is let's do it from this other one. When the bar is about this angle, Mario can start moving to the right? And as the bar sweeps to the right, Mario just walks right behind it. No big deal. It actually prevents Mario from going fast. When that happens, it prevents Mario from basically being able to slip in and run forward. So this moving counterclockwise has a huge window in which it slows Mario down, and then the rest of the window where it doesn't impede Mario at all. So it's a much smaller dangerous window, a much more sort of annoying, if you will, window where you have to slow down, but still not that threatening and dangerous timing-wise. Two things moving in the same direction is a lot more lenient timing-wise than two things moving in opposite directions. So for all those reasons, a fire bar moving counterclockwise would not produce good results compared to clockwise design. So yeah, that's mostly what I was thinking. So that's interesting. Number 4, using figure 1, arrange these distinct sections to create a refining linear trend. Explain your reasoning. Okay, so back then I had a whole bunch of terms. Where is it? Figure 4? Even Figure 1. I had a whole bunch of terms for um, different types of progression of level elements for level design. So like if there's one Goomba in one section and two Goombas in the next and three in the next, I'd call that something very specific. It was like a linear trend that's refining, I think. So it's getting harder and the more of the same element is being added. That's all basically I'm asking here. It's just take this image and arrange them to where it's getting harder over time. Not too complicated. So Harbrough's sequence that he offered is 2 1 4 3. 2 1 4 3. Interesting. Excuse me. That's so interesting. Why would he think? That is interesting. He's probably right too. 2, it's obviously the easiest. You can't die at all. You can close your eyes and progress through that part. 1 is a little harder because if you run off the stairs, you can gain momentum, and then all of a sudden there's a pit, and you got to make sure that you jump over it. So that's obviously a little harder than number 2. Harbrough's put 4. You start off in a section, and then there's a pit, but you can just jump from any of these steps. You can almost jump from the beginning starting point and get over the lava, practically. So these steps are pretty much ignored, right? But 3, because of the low ceiling, you can't jump from the starting platform. You can't jump from the second one, the second step. You have to jump-ish from the third or fourth step. And if you travel down the third or fourth step, you could be easily gathering momentum, which makes the lava drop-off pit here that comes even earlier even more dangerous. And therefore, that's the refining trend. Let's see what Harbrough's explains. The reason is that a refining trend adds or subtracts elements in order to increase the consequences. More larger pits means more chances of dying and more jumps, influencing the player action mechanics which would need to be executed more precisely. Correct. Question number 5. Using figure 2, arrange at least 5 of these distinct sections so that they represent a refining conceptual trend. Explain your reasoning. So let's just clickety so you can see it all clearly. And stop repeating words. Check out the mini mouse and the tippity tappity. Hey. What can I say except? Alright. So, I've been listening to Moana, so you'll have to deal with it. We have to arrange these, or Harbrough's did. I don't have to do anything. Arrange these in a way. You have to pick 5 of these sections, and you have to arrange them in a way that does something that I need to read. 5 of these so that they represent a refining conceptual trend. Explain your reasoning. So refining means getting harder or more complex. Conceptual means it's not just picking the same elements, but it's taking some aspect of the gameplay itself and influencing that. Instead of just adding more Goombas, you might have to add like a different enemy, a different thing here, adding a pit, subtracting a pit, adding a pipe, who knows. So Harbrough's picked 1A. I can't really draw on the screen, but 1A here. 2B. Okay. 1A, 2B. 6B. Okay. Right here. My head's in the way of one of them, but too bad. 6B, 2A. 1C. Okay, so the way he explains it, as I said above, refining means to increase the consequences of the precision of the player's actions and mechanics. Conceptual trend instead refers to a kind of variation that adds or subtracts different elements in the previous distinct sections to create new and interesting challenges rather than focusing on the same element or group of elements. So 1A, no enemies, just coin blocks, no way to get hurt, no way to suffer. Okay, that's a good starting point. 2B, enemies drop down from the from the ceiling. There's kind of plenty of room to There's kind of plenty of room to jump. You may be Super Mario, you may be Small Mario. You got some options here. You can see the Goombas coming. A little dangerous. 6B. Now you have less room to jump. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Same room to jump. 1. No, this is a 3. Is that less? Yes, three blocks underneath both. Now you have a tiny little hole so you can get around the enemies. This one, if you kick the enemies, it'll bounce back, so that's definitely more complex than a Goomba. It's dangerous down here. The blocks above your head bonk you down, so there's absolutely no space like up here to like cleanly jump over them with your maximum jump. So a little bit, yeah, I'll take this. This is a little bit more complex, despite the fact that you can jump over the top of them. That's a potentially questionable element, but still, the challenge is still there. 2A. So then we have one of the tiniest, narrowest passageways, and then another 3 space gap under here. So that's kind of good. The Koopa makes it dangerous if you kick it backwards. I don't think it bounces back at you. If you kick it forward, it shouldn't either. But then fewer coins, different combination of enemies, tightest space, we'll take that. And then 1C. More open space, you can jump over the Koopas completely. Kicking the Koopa left makes it come back. That's kind of like what we had down below. I'm not sure why this one would be more difficult than this one, 2A or 6B. But he offers another set of things, so we'll do this. 4B. 4B, right here. It's very simple opening, just a pit, no enemies. We'll take it. 3A. Now there's just some enemies, alright? So if you can master getting over this pit, which is a few simple jumps, then you'll have some simple enemies and platforms. Okay. Enemies are moving, they're dynamic. Squishing a Goomba in this formation will cause it to rebound off of its ally, so that's already a little dangerous if you just randomly decide to squish only the middle Goomba. Lots more complexity can happen there. 3B. Oop, 3B. Now there's a pit. A Goomba you skip. A large jump, kind of like the pipe you did, but now you have to be careful on the exit, jumping before and around this thingy. That is a little more tricky. It's combining the height and an enemy element here, and I guess you could assume that this pipe is still here, even though we're only looking at this section. So that causes Goomba to become somewhat of a trap. 3B, 5A, and then we have an even more elaborate trap. It's the same 2 pit setup, an even taller pipe, an even bumpier ascent, right? These steps here make it even trickier. And then these Koopas to make it even trickier to try to get up on the steps. So that's getting much more complicated. And then 5B, we just have moving platforms. This is the only case of moving platforms. Very few moving platforms in the entire game. Pits that are pretty wide. So one of the trends between these elements is pits and jumping over things to navigate the pits. So 3A was the second one. Yeah, and like jumping over things, and then this one has no pits, and the next one had pits, and this one has lots of big pits. And I guess you can't take your time if you're waiting on the these lifts, depending on which direction they're moving. I can accept that. It's hard when you have to put 5 of them in a row, right? And all these images are obviously taken from 1, 2, and other underground stages from the original Mario Brothers. Alright. Use figure 3. Add a level element to make the trend between section 1 and 2 diminished conceptual. Oops. Figure 3. Diminished conceptual by adding one level element. Okay. So the element you can add or subtract or whatever cannot be a fire bar. It's got to be something different, and then it's got to make this whole section easier. So Harbor said any power-ups. A Starman power-up would be the best for your diminishing trend, or a Fire Flower for the invincibility iframes if you take damage, leading to a much easier and sloppy challenge or whatever. So you can just basically damage boost it. I need to check my Twitch chat because I need to. Where is it? I probably deleted it. Not good. Alright, Twitch chat, I have you up just in case you guys were saying anything. So yeah, adding a power-up definitely would invalidate a lot of this. It's why you don't see a lot of power-ups in Bowser stages. You don't see hardly any coins and you don't see a lot of power-ups. Number 7, use figure 4, add a single element to make the trend between 1 and 2 static. So figure 4, a single element that doesn't make a difference to the gameplay challenge, right? So he says a hard block on 5p. 5 is here, p is here. That's interesting. It's an interesting choice. So the reason why adding a hard block right here on 5p would basically not make the challenge any easier or harder is because by the time you jump up over this, the most shallow you can land normally is on the edge of this platform, and if you just hold forward from here, you'll fall down here and you'll be safe. So adding this block here means you definitely will fall down here and you'll be safe even without holding forward much at all. So that's hardly a difference. Well, almost definitely, yeah. It's hardly a difference. So if you're holding forward at all, this block here would not make a difference. It wouldn't make this whole jump any safer. Let's say you jump like really shallow. Oh, I just explained that. So yeah, that's a really good answer. My answer was, back in the day, I thought like just add a coin on top of this platform in 4. If you add a coin there, I don't think the player can avoid it in any possible way and still win. Unless they like jump shallow and then wall jump, which we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, that's a good answer. Good answer. Good answer. What kind of enemy would you add to Neo RPG and why? So he says an enemy with a fixed. Let's go ahead and. An enemy with a fixed position which constantly fires in an arc, moving its face towards the player at medium range. The degree of rotation would be different enough so that the player can move between bullets with enough precision to get closer to the enemy. This enemy would serve also to shape out the level and create interesting situations and combinations with the other enemies in the game. Interesting. So Neo RPG is a game that I made in like 2 weeks when I was teaching myself game design back in 2006, right? So I made this game. It's kind of weird. I stole some graphics from an indie copycat version of Geometry Wars and blah blah blah. Windows XP. No one says that anymore. But the game's here. I explain it. I have plenty of articles about it if you're curious. But this is an interesting way of just asking someone, what would you add to the game that would add something meaningful? And you have to understand the game itself, and then you have to also understand what potential things it didn't do. I got asked a question like this when I interviewed for Gunfire Games, and they asked me what enemy would I add to Darksiders 2, and it's very similar kind of thinking here. Visual design. Oops, what's the question? What's the takeaway? Don't mess with Maui. What changes would you make to Neo RPG to make the game cleaner? Explain. A visual design element for better feedback and more information about the states of the enemies. Use some more colors. That's cool. That works for me. Yeah, good exam, Harborus. This exam is so funny. I wasn't I was originally just going to type up a response like I did everyone else who did these exams. By the way, I can who cares? The people who did the exams originally sent me emails with their answers, and I still have that in my Gmail. It's the same Gmail I've been using forever. So when I type in Mario final exam, I get all of their exams right there. It's just 10 years of history right there. Fun. But it's kind of interesting that this exam popped up right when it did, because the next assignment for the Mario Maker workshop, we're going to be pretty much doing this. We're going to take elements, slices, if you will, of the existing Mario games, and we're going to analyze them in terms of the skill used in those sections, and then we're going to recreate those sections inside of Mario Maker, and then create an easier version and or a harder version, or maybe two easier versions or two harder versions. Maybe we should always do easier and harder. I don't know. But yeah, we're going to be doing something very similar to kind of what I walked through here, explaining this final exam. So if you're in the Mario Maker workshop, stay tuned for that. I'm going to write out the rules right now. Just thought I'd throw the stream up because I didn't feel like typing. And until next time, guys, where is my... Here he is. Peace.